Today we're going to be talking about this Palmetto State Armory Sabre Super SASS 308. So this gun out of the box is going to come from the manufacturer with a little bit of grease or whatever it is that they put in there. They also do test fire these, so it will have some carbon on it, but we're going to show you how to initially clean this gun. But first, let's talk about a little bit what the rifle comes with and then what we added onto it. So what the rifle comes with is going to be this B5 stock, which has adjustable vertically and horizontally, as well as the B5 grip that comes on it too. The nice thing about getting the Sabre line is it's a little bit more premium of PSA's line. So with that comes this Radian Raptor charging handle, as well as their Radian Talon 45 or 90 degree safety that's adjustable up to your liking. This 20-inch rifle is something that we wanted to bring in so that we could have a gun that gets a little bit past something that a normal 16-inch 5.56 or 223 would get you to. Those guns traditionally are going to be something for your up to 400 to 600 yard range, and I know that's kind of controversial, but this is going to be something that's more superior past that up to about your 1,000 yard range. When PSA released this, they released a billet option and a forged option for the upper and the lower. This is the forged version of that firearm. Now what we've added to this is going to be this Nightforce NX8 2.5 to 20. As well as the SPUHR mount to go with it. We also added this RRS Arca Rail for more stability as well as versatility so that we can add the bipod on the front, or if we want to shoot with the tripod, we can do that as well back here. We added the Atlas Bipod on the end here, as well as a muzzle device that goes to this Huxwrx Flow 7.62 titanium can. So now that we've talked a little bit about the gun itself, what we've added to it, this gun hasn't been touched or cleaned besides putting these accessories on. We're gonna go ahead and take this thing apart, get it cleaned up so that we can go zero it tomorrow. Now before you want to take apart this gun, you always wanna make sure that a firearm is unloaded. We don't keep any live ammo on the table, just for safety purposes. First things first, we're gonna start with the takedown pins on the rear here as well as the front. We're gonna separate the lower and the upper. Okay, now that we have the upper receiver separate from the lower receiver, what we're gonna do is we're gonna take this upper receiver and we're gonna take out the bolt carrier group as well as take out the charging handle. So we'll take the charging handle out here, and that'll slide this out, put that there, and then the charging handle will come out, put that over here, and then we're gonna go ahead and start with these small accessories first, and then we'll move into going with the larger parts of the gun, which is going to be the upper receiver and the lower receiver. So now that we have everything taken apart, what I suggest you do first is go ahead and start by soaking the charging handle and the bolt carrier group. Now you can take apart parts of the bolt carrier group to take out the actual bolt itself and the firing pin and the retaining clip for the firing pin. And then we're going to take a sheet off of our microfiber towel roll here. And set this down on the desk, and then we're just going to go ahead and put these parts on here, and then we're going to start with soaking this as soon as we get this bolt carrier group apart. Again, if you don't want to take that apart or you want to learn how to, definitely look up a video so you know how to put it back together. So we're going to go ahead and take this apart. Once it's all apart, we'll start soaking it. So now that we have the bolt carrier group apart, as you can see, it is pretty dirty, even though this gun's never been fired by us. It was actually fired by the manufacturer to make sure that everything was working properly. So we're gonna go ahead and start with the cleaner here. And we're gonna just go ahead and soak some of this down. And get it soaking that way. It sits there and kind of breaks down that grease and grime and carbon that still may be on these parts so that we could lubricate it in just a second. So now we can either take one of our cleaning towels here or rip another towel off if you have the microfiber towel roll, which these are great because then you can just toss them later. These guys you can usually clean if you want to reuse them, or toss them once they get really dirty. And we're going to go ahead and start wiping this stuff down. Now sometimes certain parts won't soak long enough, so make sure that you go back over those parts that you're having troubles with, and we'll just hit that 1 or 2 more times, let that sit while we clean the rest of this stuff. So I just wanted to touch, as you're cleaning these parts, you'll see wear marks that are on some of these parts. We want to take note of these so that way we know what to hit with oil and make sure it's lubricated next, so that way that these parts keep moving and reduce friction down the road. And sometimes some of this carbon can be built up, so we'll use like a nylon brush or whatever it is that you have that would be safe on these materials, just to agitate that with the chemical being on there, and that'll kind of help take down that built up grime or carbon that's on those parts. So now that we have all these small parts all cleaned up, before we oil it, put it all back together, I'm just going to take this towel and all these parts, set it aside, make sure you don't lose anything, and then we'll move on to the lower and the upper receiver. So now that we have all of these small accessories and parts like the bolt carrier group and all the parts to that and the charging handle cleaned, we're going to move to the lower receiver. Now just take note, when you get a new gun out of the box, you may think it's perfect and clean just like a car, but it's not. These parts are going to be the more dirty parts out of all of them. The lower and the upper receiver could have some grease in there, but there's not going to be much carbon built up. So you just want to make sure you wipe all that away, clean it really well, and then we'll get into lubricating and protecting after that. So since this is fairly clean, what I'm going to do, instead of spraying directly all over the surface, I'm actually just going to spray it into the towel, and then I'll go ahead and wipe everything down, including the outside. Now our cleaner is going to be really nice because you can actually clean the outside of the gun, the grip, the stock, without adding any solvents or lubricants to it. It's a non-solvent cleaner, which brings up my second point of make sure that you lubricate after you use the cleaner on the inside of the gun, but it is nice to wipe away those factory oils that may be on the outside of the firearm. All right, so now the lower receiver is fairly clean. There wasn't much in there, so we just gave it a nice wipe down. There was surface oils on the outside, so we just wiped that down. We're gonna go ahead and set aside the lower and grab the upper and start working on that. Okay, so now we have the upper receiver here. I just sprayed some cleaner on here on this towel from our microfiber towel roll, and I'm gonna go ahead and start wiping down part of the inside here. This is kind of when you might need some help with some accessories like cotton swabs or cotton patches. We have a few here, so we're going to go ahead and just wipe down the inside, get some of that surface grease off, a little bit of carbon built up. It's mainly in the upper, not much was in the lower. Get that cleaned up, and then we'll jump into applying the oil. So again, while I'm cleaning this, I'm taking note of where I see wear. A lot of times you'll see wear right back on this tail where the charging handle slides in and out of. So that's going to be a key spot that we're going to want to apply the oil. Okay, so now we have a lot of the surface oils and factory grease in there, and a little bit of carbon in the upper from them testing it and making sure that it fires properly. We're going to go ahead and move in to now applying oil in all the right spots. So since we just finished cleaning the upper, I'm going to start with oiling that just to get that big part out of the way. For this, I like to use some patches, and I like to use something just a little bit bigger. Some people call them shotgun patches, but this one in particular is going to be a 2" by 2" square. So I'm going to start with about 2 of these, just because the oil is going to saturate it pretty well. And then I'm going to go ahead and apply it on the inside of the upper. All right, so we got most of the upper kind of oiled up. Any parts where you saw that wear and tear is where you're going to want to just directly apply some of this oil to the surface. Inside here, especially where the bolt carrier group kind of slides around and goes back and forth, as well as the charging handle. So I like to do that. And if you want to, you can kind of knock it down or even it out a little bit with that cotton swab or whatever it is that you used previously to kind of even it out a bit. And then you should be good to go on the upper receiver. So now we're going to set aside this upper receiver. Now that we have that oiled up, and we're going to move to the lower here. And this one should be fairly easy. I usually like to add a little bit of oil to my takedown pins if they're a little dry right out of the box, just a little bit there. And then you'll want to add it to the safety selector inside, as well as the trigger and the springs that have to be moving at all times in there. So now that we have most of the lower receiver oiled up, I just want to make a note, don't be afraid to add too much. You might have some runoff that are coming out of the takedown pins, or if you have these anti-walk pins for your trigger, you'll see stuff start to come out of it, which is good because you want to have that oil be pushing out dirt and carbon and keeping it loose and not keeping it gunked up in those areas that you need to be moving. So let's go ahead and take this lower receiver, now that it's all oiled, we're gonna go ahead and set that aside. And now we're gonna slide over all of the smaller parts, like the bolt carrier group and the charging handle and all the pieces that go into it. We're gonna go ahead and oil up all of the parts that we took out of the bolt carrier group. Again, looking for where we saw the most carbon buildup and wear and tear. Sometimes I like to just kind of lather it up with some oil, and then I'll actually use kind of my fingers because it doesn't absorb or take any of the oil away. And I'll just go ahead and lubricate all those parts of the bolt here. Now we have the bolt done. Go ahead and move to the actual firing pin itself and do kind of the same thing. And last but not least, I'm going to go ahead and apply some that's inside of the bolt carrier group where that bolt slides into. Make sure that runs down in there, gets it nice and clean. And then I'm going to go ahead and add oil to the outside of the bolt carrier group here, especially here where we see a lot of wear. Okay, so we have the entire bolt all lubed up here. Now I'm going to go ahead and reassemble the bolt carrier group back together, so that way we can move on to the charging handle and then reinsert this and put the whole gun back together. So now we got the bolt carrier group all back together. Everything inside and outside is all oiled up. I'm going to go ahead and take a little bit of oil here and put it on the charging handle. So that way we can make sure that this is lubricated on both sides. And sometimes I like to use these cotton swabs, and I'll just run a pretty oiled up one down this, so that way it's not really, really wet, but it doesn't always hurt to have it pretty lubricated. Now everything is lubricated as far as the bolt carrier group, the charging handle, the upper receiver, the lower receiver. Now what we're gonna do is we're gonna go ahead and grab the upper receiver now, and we're gonna go ahead and slide in the bolt carrier group and charging handle back in. So we'll put the charging handle here. One tip to note when you are putting the bolt carrier group back in, sometimes this little pin will be on the side. Make sure that you just pop out your bolt here from there, and then when you go ahead and slide this in, it'll actually go in pretty easily. And then we're going to go ahead and slide this bad boy in, and that should lock it all in with the charging handle attaching to the upper, and then we'll move on to putting the upper receiver back on the lower receiver. So now we have everything all put back together. I do see some oil that's on the charging handle from me grabbing that, trying to put the bolt carrier group in there. The nice thing again about our cleaner is that it's non-solvent, so it'll be able to wipe that stuff away and not leave your surface all oily. The stuff that you're gonna touch that you don't want to be lubricated, like the charging handle, and maybe when you're putting the upper and the lower back together, you can just go ahead and wipe this down. And sometimes at this point you'll get a little bit of oil seeping out once you put everything back together. I just wipe that nice and clean. Now, one product that we do have that I do really like about the cleaning process is sometimes you'll smudge your optic if you don't have covers or if you have a red dot. Then you can use our optic glass cleaner in order to wipe those down when you're all done cleaning, so that way you have a fresh optic next time you go to the range or you go to shoot. And with that is our microfiber towel, so that way you're not scratching something like these high-end optics or something similar, so you have a clear sight picture every time. So now we have everything back together. One tip that I like to finish off with is if you are running a suppressor these can get carbon locked on there. So sometimes I'll just take a little bit of the oil and I'll drop some of this on the threads of the actuator themselves and a little bit of threads on the muzzle device, especially if you have a new muzzle device that hasn't been lubricated at all. Just helps with that so that it doesn't get carbon locked. And when it does and you have built up carbon in here, it's just a lot easier to clean off and take off the suppressor in the future. So now we've got everything put back together. It's been cleaned from the factory. We have our oil in there. We know personally that it's been oiled by you or us, and we've seen all the parts that wear down pretty easily inside of there, just running a few rounds through it. We hit those parts with the oil, made sure everything was clean before we did that. And now I just want to point out one thing. We do offer a CLP as well, which is something I like to take to the range with me. Reason being, if you need to oil it up a little bit more or clean it or whatever it may be at the range, this is an easy all-in-one product that you can do there. So that way you don't have to worry about doing a deep cleaning when you're at the range. Thank you guys for watching this video and checking out this new PSA Super SASS 308. I want to give a big shout out to the guys at Mile High Shooting Accessories for helping us get this thing outfitted perfectly. If you'd like to check out any of our cleaning products or towels and accessories for that, go visit riptidearmory.com and we'll see you in the next one.